A new series today. I'm very excited. This is the series of heroes and heroines. We're learning about all of the heroes and heroines of the Jewish people throughout history, based on the yahrzeits of the week. And this will be an amazing opportunity for us to connect to the, what does it mean to be a real Jew? You know, I think there's something very real about connecting to people, not just connecting to their words, not just connecting to the Torah, but connecting to who they were. The best education is to be able to show by example. And someone was asking me, what's my secret? What's my secret? He was telling me how much he's impressed with my son, and he himself is a real very strange person. And so I told him, just dive into Hashem, but I was thinking, well, so anyway, but there's something. It's an amazing. It's a bigger Torah to learn from people, to learn from our tzaddikim's lives, to learn from themselves is really as a much bigger teaching than anything that they wrote down. It's just simply who they were, So the idea is to go through the yahrzeits of the week, and to be able to connect to these people, to be able to learn about them, and through this we'll be able to really get a very well-rounded picture of what it means to be a Jew, and be able to there's not everybody's going to be the same. There's not some people like to whitewash Jewish history, that everybody is really the same, and they're all there is only one kind of Jew, and if you're not that, then you're treif. And the truth is that there's lots of different types, and lots of different styles, and lots of different kinds of personalities, and lots of different flavors of Judaism, and part of this is to be able to get to the different kinds of flavors, and to see what it is that we are striving for. Okay, that the ideas of a hero is something that we want to emulate them, and we want to follow in their footsteps. So, B'ezrat Hashem, we should be able to connect to these personalities and be able to learn a lot, and be able to understand where we stand in this story of the Jewish people. Okay, so I want to start with some yahrzeits we had earlier this week on Yud Iyar. So this was Sunday night, Monday. So we have 3 yahrzeits. We have the yahrzeit of Aili Hakohen. Aili Hakohen was one of the second to last of the Shoftim. We have the Rif, and we have the Pri Megadim. Okay, so one by one. So Aili Hakohen. So first of all, it doesn't say in Tanakh, it doesn't say in Shoftim, it doesn't say when he passed away, but we learned this from Megillas Ta'anis, which is a Tanaitic source, an ancient source, who says over there in Parakut Gimel that he passed away on Yud Iyar, and this is actually paskened in Halacha. The Shulchan Aruch says in Siman in Tav Kuf Pei that this is called a Tainas Tzadikim. That there were some people that had a custom to fast on this day. What happened? So we know what happened when he died, and that is that there was a war against the Plishtim, against the Palestinians, and they captured the Aron HaKodesh. Okay, and they took away the Aron HaKodesh. Also, his sons Chofni and Pinchas, they were also killed by the Plishtim, and the Aron HaKodesh was captured. And it says that when the messenger came to tell Aili Hakohen that the Aron HaKodesh was captured, so it says that he was sitting on the chair, and he was sitting back. He was tilting his, I think that when I was in grade school and I was learning this in Navi, that was my favorite thing, that every 5 minutes my teacher had to tell me not to so you know what I mean, to sit go on a tilt. So I think she was trying to scare us by saying, look what happened to Aili Hakohen, that he died because he was when he went back. So he went back and he broke his spine, and he died. Okay, so Aili Hakohen, it's very interesting. It's very interesting that a lot of the stuff that we know about Aili Hakohen is not positive. He was one of the judges He's one of the judges, but the Torah doesn't seem to think so highly of him, because all the stories about him are negative. First of all, it says that he wasn't so great in being able to control his sons. Okay, he had two sons, Chafni and Pinchas, and it says that they were not good. They were bnei Belial, which means like empty people, and it says that they did certain sins. First of all, that they were kohanim, so and they would take the biggest parts of the meat and take it for themselves. And it also says that they would sleep with women. So Chazal say, the Gemara says that anybody who wants to take this literally is just making a mistake. So what does it actually mean? It actually means, what does it mean? Yishkavun et hanashim. So it says, what?
They'll have to sleep over.
Invite them to sleep over.
No, I'm saying, isn't it because since they were bringing korban that was burnt entirely, they had left them for last, and then they would have to sleep over in Jerusalem, and they weren't able to be with their husband.
Right. The idea was that sometimes the women, that they would bring a korban that was necessary for this korban to be permitted to go back to their husbands, and they were expected to bring these women to be first, because it's a big mitzvah to allow a husband and wife to be together, right? That's why like there's different rabbanim that are, when it comes to taras mishpacha, that some rabbanim are more machmir, some are more mekel. So like it's important to keep in mind that like the Chazal say that it's an important mitzvah to be able to allow a husband and wife to be together. So they didn't care, and they felt, it seems like they appreciated, like they liked the fact that they were controlling these women's lives, which is obviously a disgusting thing. And the Torah really, the Navi reprimands them for this. What?
Maybe it's emergency.
I'm sorry?
Maybe it's emergency.
No, it's okay. And it says that he tried to tell them to stop, and they didn't stop. And so it says that like it holds them accountable for the fact that they weren't so good. We know also that when Hannah came to daven, so she was barren, she wasn't able to have children, and she came to daven to Hashem for children, and he thought that she was drunk, and it says Hannah, when will you stop drinking? And she says, Rabbi, I'm sorry to tell you that this is ani isha kshas ruach anochi, that I'm just davening to Hashem. And so he explains she explains the thing, and so he apologizes, and he says, and he gives her a bracha. So there's interesting thing that we learn how to daven from Chana. We learn how to daven from Chana, that she davened that Raks Fatehanaot v'Kololo Yishmea, that her lips were moving and her voice wasn't audible. So we learn from that how to daven Shemona Esrei. That the epitome of davening is the tefillah of Chana. So I was thinking that it could be that the reason why we learn from Chana is to show us that how her tefillah was so perfect that we shouldn't think that the reason why Shmuel was born was because of the bracha of Eli. That the reason why her tefillah was answered was because she had the most amazing tefillah, but really the bracha of Eli was really not the operating function over here. So we know that he also, so he made a mistake regarding Chana, that he thought that she was off, and really she was a big tzaddikas. We actually mentioned this on Sunday, that there was there's something called halacha, that Maharal halacha b'fnei Rabbi. It says that everybody was waiting online that Eli or the Kohanim should shecht their kabbanot, and Shmuel grew up with Eli, which is also an interesting point. That Chana promised that when she has a baby, that she's going to bring him to the Beis Hamikdash. So she brought him to the Beis Hamikdash, and really Eli was the one who was bringing up Shmuel. And when Shmuel was a kid, so it says that he didn't like that everybody was waiting online to have to go to Eli or his sons. And he said, this is really silly. We don't have to do this because the halacha is actually that shchita is ksher is bizarre. That even a non-kohen is allowed to do the shchita. The only after shchita from Kabbalah and halacha and zrika, only those parts have to be done by a kohen. But really, the shechting, the slaughtering of the korban, doesn't have to be actually done by a kohen. So Eli said to him, you're right in the halacha. However, you're a Maharal halacha b'fnei Rabbi. You are answering questions. You're saying halachas in front of your Rebbe, so you deserve to die. So I'm going to kill you. And And so it says that Chana was there, and Chana was really upset. And says, Rabbi, come on, you're going to kill my son? And he says, don't worry, Chana, I'll give you a bracha. You should give another kid. And he says, no, Al Hanar Hazais Falalti, I want this kid. And he says, okay, fine, I'll leave him. And I don't know, this entire interaction does not put Aili in good light. What the heck? First of all, he was right. So I think that this whole story doesn't really put Aili in such great light. And so anyway, so the Torah says, the Navi says that there was a prophet. There's a prophet that came. There's a prophet that came and cursed Aili, for the fact that his kids are messing up, and he told him that lo yehei zaken beveischa kol hayamim, that because you messed up, so you and your family messed up, so I'm cursing you that no one in your family for all eternity is going to have a long life. And it appears that this curse actually worked. Actually, that they weren't able to live long lives. And the Gemara reports in Rosh Hashanah that the two Amoraim, Rabba and Abaye, that they were both from the descendants of Aili, and they passed away earlier than they should have. However, it says that they were able to make it longer than most of the descendants of Aili because of their Torah. So it says that Rabba and Abaye, Rabba said that normally a person from Beis Eli won't be able to live a long life, but with Torah he'll be able to have a long life. And Abaye said that normally he won't be able to live a long life, but through Torah and Ma'asim Tovim he'll be able to live a long life. So they practiced what they preached. So Rabba was always learning, and Abaye was always learning, and he was always doing acts of kindness. And it says that because of this, Rabba lived to the age of 40, which is apparently longer than he should have, but Abaye lived to the age of 60. That the difference between the person that only wanted to learn Torah and the person that did Torah and Chesed, so it gave him another 20 years. Okay, so we see that. So we see from it, the Gemara is clearly saying that the Chesed is at least as important as Torah. And this is the only way that was able to overcome this curse of the house of Aili. So this is the story of Aili. That being said, if the Torah doesn't seem to say that Aili is the greatest person that we're trying to emulate, so why would it be that some tzaddikim fast on his yahrzeits? So apparently it's probably not because of the fact that he died, but rather because it was actually a horrible thing that the Aron HaKadosh got captured. And that is actually something tragic. So the 10 tzaddikim is to say that the fact that the Aron HaKadosh was able to be captured on this day, that tells us that there's something bad about this day, and that's why tzaddikim fast in order to try to counteract this negative energy. Okay, so that's Aili Hakohen. That's in the time of the Shoftim. This is the time of the Shoftim. This is really very soon after we got the Torah. This is 40 years after is the story of Yeshua. Then the story of Yeshua is 14 years, 14 years of dividing the land of Israel. Then already starts the story of Shoftim. So this is the whole story of Shoftim is at 400 years. So this is approximately 450 years. 460 years after we got the Torah. Very, very, this is prehistoric times, okay? I don't mean prehistoric, I mean very, 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 very early. Okay. The next personality we have is also, by our standards, is very early. That is the Rif, okay? Rabbi Yitzchak Alfasi. He is one of the early Rishonim. He's considered on the borderline between what's called the Gaonim and the Rishonim, okay? Meaning like this, that we're talking he lived from the year 1013 to 1103. Okay, so approximately he was passed away approximately 1,000 years ago, and the Rif. So he was a Rav in Tunisia. He was also a Rav in North Africa. He's called Alfasi. So Alfasi is from the word fez, which is in Spain. Okay, historically, it's not so clear that he actually lived in Spain. That they lived in Fez. It could be he did, could be he didn't. It could be that maybe he had some story there. His family was from there, but like that's what he called. That's what he called his sefer. It's called the Alfasi, Rav Alfas, the Halachos HaAlfas. So what is this all about, and what is his place in Jewish history? So he was not the first. He was not the first Rishon to Paskan Halacha. However, he was unique in the fact that he translated the entire Shas according to Halacha. Okay, meaning that Gemara, when you learn Gemara, one of the interesting things about Gemara is that it's a conversation. Okay, it's a conversation that doesn't have a bottom line. Okay, like many times when you learn Gemara, so the answer is teku, which means let it stand. Yeah, okay, thank you so much. So, and when you learn a Gemara, so it's really not clear what's the bottom line. Sometimes it'll just bring an array of opinions, and it won't tell you which way to go. Okay, and there's the Gemara. Learning Gemara is really about learning the discussion and being part of this conversation, like understanding that halacha and like the Torah is not about it's not about the bottom line. It's about understanding how we got to the bottom line, and that's I like to say that's why the Gemara starts always in Daf Bet. Okay, that like it starts in Daf Bet because the person learning Gemara needs to understand that I'm jumping into the middle of a conversation. Okay, so something which can to some people be frustrating is that when you learn Gemara, you don't necessarily know what to do. Okay, and that's very important. But that's called halacha. Halacha is what to do. Okay, so Gemara is Gemara. Gemara is the wisdom of Hashem. Okay, and the wisdom of Hashem is actually very multifaceted, and it's very like it's a kaleidoscope of different ideas, and the Gemara wants you to really connect to all the different ideas together, but bottom line, you actually have to know what you're supposed to do. You have to know like what the Torah wants from you. So what the Rif did is that he basically translated the entire Shas. He went from brachas until nida, and he skipped all of the conversation. He also skipped anything which isn't relevant to halacha. He skipped anything which is, for example, not relevant today because it has to do with the temple, with karbanot. So anything that's not relevant to people in Tunisia in the year 1000, so he skipped it. So it's a very like practical guide. So like he wanted his students, his community members, to be able to just read his book and get a basic summary of Shas, but was relevant to me. Okay, so I know all of the discussions in Shas, I know all the opinions, and what's the bottom line? So he basically gives you like the beginning and the end, and skips the things that aren't relevant. Okay, so the Rif's work is very monumental. You know that the Beit Yosef, Yosef Karo, when he was writing the Shulchan Aruch, so he had a very simple way of paskin halacha that he took three Rishonim, the Rambam, the Rif, and the Rosh, and he thought that they were the greatest halachists of all time. And so he basically said that when I have these three, so whenever it's 2 against 1, I'm always going to paskin like the 2. And so basically, the Beit Yosef was saying in the statement that he looks at the Rif as one of the 3 greatest halachic authorities of all time. Okay, which is quite a compliment. And so he's that's his claim to fame. Why is he so important? That he really made learning halacha more of a mainstream thing. Okay, like he wanted people to be able to connect to the bottom line, that it should be available to them. Like when I'm learning Gemara, to be able to know what's the takeaway. Okay, so he wrote it in the words of the Gemara, and nowadays at least it's printed in the same. Here I have a Gemara here, so I can show you that it looks like a Gemara. Like when you open up the Rif, like this is. You would never know that it's printed in the same format as the Gemara. So, like it's meant to be like a take 2 of the Gemara, and it's a way of being able to connect. So this is it's called the Rif. What?
The commentaries inside the Rif.
Depends on the Masechet. A lot of times it's the Ran, it's Rabbeinu Nissim, and a lot of times it's the Nimuk Yosef. Over here in Erevin, it's exceptional. It's Rabbeinu Yonasan, but But it's basically usually it's the also sometimes it's Rebbeinu Yonah, the brachas it's Rebbeinu Yonah. Okay, so it's either Rebbeinu Yonah, Rebbeinu Nisim, or the Nimukei Yosef. Okay, there's a Rashi on the Rif, but that's not from Rashi. It's called Rashi al Rif, but it's not. I don't think we know who actually wrote it. It's like somebody like borrowed Rashi's and cut and pasted, but sometimes he switches things around, and that's why that's when it gets famous. That's when it gets interesting, when he says something interesting. But so that's Rebbeinu Yitzchak Kafasi, and he's considered the Ramban. The Ramban was a big fan of his. The Ramban that on the bottom of the Ran, at the bottom of the Rif. So there's two big, like two famous Rishonim. That is the Baal Hamara, whose name was Reb Zrachi Halevi, and the Ramban. The Ramban writes a sefer called Milchamot Hashem. Okay, so the Reb Zrachi Halevi, so he's always critiquing the Rif. Like he never agrees with the Rif. It could be sometimes he agrees, but he doesn't talk. When he never says like, nice point. Like he only speaks when he says, like when he thinks that the Rif is off, and he thinks the Rif is very off, and he sometimes even speaks in condescending tones, like the Rif made I don't know what he was thinking. And the Ramban wrote the sefer Milchamot Hashem, the battles of God, in order to defend the Rif. So the Ramban is always on the Rif side, and in the introduction to this book Milchamot Hashem, so the Ramban has a famous comment where he says that the Torah is different than science. The concept of having a proof in a Torah thought is very different than in secular knowledge. That in secular knowledge, you can bring a logical proof, you can bring a scientific proof, and in Torah there is no such thing. That the way to come to a conclusion will never be conclusive, and it'll always be dependent on something like deep in your soul to understand like what's really right and what's a stronger proof and because like nothing's 100%. Some things are meant not to be taken literally, and some things are meant to be taken literally. Some things make more sense, some things make less sense, and so he writes over there that just because you found a Gemara that seems to say not like the Rif, that doesn't mean that you're right, and sometimes like whatever. But the Ramban made a point to every single time that the Baal Hamar went to go against the Rif, every single time the Ramban stood in defense of the Rif. Okay,
were they alive at the same time?
No, they were a little bit after.
No, but the Ramban and the...
Yes, the Ramban and the Baal Hamar were at the same time, but they were both after the Rif. They were just generations. I don't think they knew each other. I think they were just...
From the other side of the world.
Yeah, and I don't think they would have been friends. I think they would have been...
They still love each other. Yeah, they had their kids marry each other.
Right, the Granny Vamas.
They always argue.
If you'd see the way that they speak about each other, you would see it's a little bit more aggressive. Like Beis Hillel, Beis Shammai, the Beis Hillel would always mention Beis Shammai's opinions first, and then they would disagree. And so, meaning, they didn't it does not mean that okay, so everybody. So first, the dummies they say no, it was not like that. It was like that they actually said that our great rabbis Beis Shammai they said like this, and we humbly disagree. It was there were actually a very tremendous amount of mutual respect with Beis Shammai. But over here it doesn't sound like that. It sounds like that he was actually upset at the fact that he kept on arguing on the Rif, and okay, I'm sure that they wouldn't be upset at each other, but he thought that it was wrong. Sometimes people get serious about halacha. It's okay. It's okay. There was a story that who was it with? Yaakov Kamenetsky and Rav Ruderman was part of the story, and Rav Aaron Kotler. They were meeting in this. They were arguing about some get. That there was some lady that got divorced, and there was some question if the get was kosher or not, and they were meeting, and somebody came to visit them. Somebody was out of town, and somebody came to visit, and he was staying in a hotel. So the other two rabbanim came to visit him in his hotel room, and so in the heat of the argument, so they were shouting at each other because rabbanim when they get excited about Gemara, so they shout, and so the I don't know how to say like one of the the room service. Like she thought that like she called the police. She thought that they're going to kill each other. So, and they came in. And they so what's going on? I said, no. It's just it's about a gag, So anyway, so that is the way that people sometimes get when it comes to important things. Okay, so now much later, about 700 years later, so another person, the Pri Megadim, also passed away on the same day, Sunday night, on Yud Iyar. Who is the Pri Megadim? The Pri Megadim is Reb Yosef Ta'omim. He was a rabbi in Germany. You could really say that he is one of the main deciding factors in halacha today. That until the Mishnah Berurah came around, so he was the bottom line. He was the bottom line in halacha. It's a very exclusive book because he was so verbose in his commentary. He was very humble, and you can see that he's very humble. He was very humble in the way that he writes. The fact that he wrote his commentary not as a standalone book, but he wrote his commentary on the commentaries on the Shulchan Aruch. Like just like we understand that the commentaries on the Shulchan Aruch, they were doing so as a way of saying that like the Shulchan Aruch is always the Shulchan Aruch, and I can never be a replacement to the Shulchan Aruch. This is, by the way, some of the Riv had enemies for the fact that he wrote his Sefer as if it's a replacement for the Shas. Right? Who else had enemies for the same reason? The Rambam. The Rambam literally called his Sefer Mishnah Torah, that this is like a second Torah, and he had many, many enemies because of that. That how dare you say that you're a replacement for the Torah? That like you're just one guy, you're just like other people are going to argue with you. You're just a Rishon. You're only a commentator. So a more humble approach is to not write your own book, but rather to write your book as a commentary on a different book. So that's what the commentaries in the Shulchan Aruch, such as the Magen Avraham, the Taz, the Shach. So they wrote their commentaries on the Shulchan Aruch, and the Pri Megadim, he wrote his commentary on them, on the commentaries. Okay, so that's like very, very extremely humble, and so he writes so much that unless you're like really, really good, you're not going to have time to learn every Pri Megadim, but yet the people that did, like the big rabbis that were the halakhic authorities, they decided that Pri Megadim is so good that he's better than everybody else, and basically his opinions were accepted. Okay, so basically until the Mishnah Berurah came around, so this is like the Pri Megadim was the bottom line in halacha. That in his life story, that actually an interesting thing that also shows his humility. That it says that when he was a Rav in Berlin, and people. And he wasn't the Rav. He just came to learn in Berlin. He was just interested in publishing Sfarim. I guess he knew that when you publish, if he would publish, it would become big, and it worked. But he didn't like that people were bothering him. People were like bothering him with their different disagreements. Like, hey, he all of their when there was a dayan in the Beis Din that once told me that people learn Shulchan Aruch and they're all excited about becoming a dayan in the Beis Din, and like they're able to like really apply all of their learning, and then they find out that that being in the Beis Din is 5% halacha and 95% lashon hara. Well, when two people come to you, two people are litigating before you, so like the Torah aspect is the 5% of the conversation, and 95% of the conversation is just people just like putting each other down and telling them that he's a liar, he's a jerk, and so he couldn't take it, he wasn't interested. He didn't sign up for this. So what he did was that he pretended that he didn't know what they were talking about. He pretended like, oh, I don't know. That's a good question. I think you should ask a rabbi. He would pretend like he's not a rab, and so it worked. So they worked. He did it so much. He did so much that people stopped coming to him. So that's how he was able to write his Sfarim. And one last point about the Pri Megadim, the Rebbe Yosef Ta'omim, is that he was upset. He writes this in the introduction to one of his books, that he was upset at the style of learning that was going on in his time. This is like before the 1800s, and this is 1,000 times more true today, that people in yeshiva, that to be considered a Talmid Chacham who deserves respect is only if you are able to have the sharpest question, the sharpest answer, and he didn't appreciate that the people that they didn't know Tanakh, that you could have people that they were that they were so sharp that they could outsmart the rabbi and outsmart the Pri Megadim, but they didn't know like the very basics of Judaism. They didn't know the stories of Tanakh. And many people. The Maharal of Prague had the same issue, by the way, that it wasn't okay that in yeshivas they don't learn Tanakh, and he didn't appreciate that people were more interested in showing off their mental acrobatics than to be able to just listen to what Hashem is telling you. So that's the BS of Taimim, and that is in the 1792. Okay, now we get to your Alter Zayda. This is on Yud Aleph. This is on Tuesday, Monday night Tuesday, was the yahrzeits of the holy Rupshitzer. Okay, the Reb Tzvi Elimelech Horowitz Mirupshitz. He was his first claim to fame was that he was born on Shavuos. He was born on the same very day that the Baal Shem Tov passed away. Okay, so many tzaddikim at the time said that this is like this, that the Baal Shem Tov's light is going over to the Rupshitzer. Just so we understand. By the way, we're talking about in the 1800s, the early 1800s. He passed away in 1827. So, and he was a Talmid of the Chaim Lublin, and before that, Rebbe Elimelech Melezhensk. His student was the Divrei Chaim of Sanz. Okay, the Sanz of Chaim Halberstam. And just to give you a perspective, so the Divrei Chaim had two rebbeim. One was Rebetzin Perele, and the other one was the Rupshitzer. And he was by the Rupshitzer for many more years than he was by the Zedishever. And yet, when he quotes the Rebbe of Zedishev, so he calls him my Rabbi, like my master, my teacher. And when he quotes the Rupshitzer, he would just call him Harav HaKadosh Mirupshitz. He would just call him the holy Rupshitzer. Okay? And so his students once asked him, the Rebbe, why do you refer to the Rupshitzer as the holy Rupshitzer, and why don't you call him my Rebbe? He was your Rebbe. He was your Rebbe for over 10 years. And so he says the Zedishever, so I feel like I was able to take something from him. I was able to understand his Kedusha a little bit. But the Rupshitzer was just so above me that I think it would be ridiculous for me to claim to be his student. Because to call him my Rebbe is to say that I'm his student. And I feel like I got so little out of him. Like Rebbe Lezer ben Hokenes says about himself, that he feels like he's klavim hamalakim minayam. I'm like a dog that's licking from the ocean. Like that's what I got from my Rebbeim. So like that's like the Rupshitzer. The Sanzer was saying that like my relationship to the Rupshitzer was like, he was so much bigger than I could ever comprehend that I feel inappropriate. I feel out of place to say that he was my Rebbe, because he was just so holy that whatever I got was just like a drop at the ocean. Okay, so when he was very young, when he was 15 years old. Right, do you want to say something?
No, his name was Naftali.
Oh my gosh! What did I say? Rebbe Naftali Rupshitzer.
Yeah.
No, the other Rebbe was Rebbe Tzvi the from Zidishev. Right. The Rupshitzer Rebbe. What? Rebbe Naftali Tzvi Rupshitzer.
Was he, besides the Talmud, was he related
to who?
Rupshitzer or no?
Who? Sanzer? No. No.
Two different he's also related to the Rebbe
Uh-huh.
Jesus.
Okay, so when Rebbe Naftali Rupshitzer, when he came to the Rebbe Elimelech Melezhensk, he was only 15 years old. By the way, he grew up Litvish. He was a governor. He became Hasidish, like all true Hasidim are, right? So that if you're born into it, it's boring, right? So Rabbi Nachman actually was born into it, and he's okay. But Reb Naftali, for example, he was born. He was a big Talmid Chacham, and he was a huge Talmid Chacham. He was a Rav in Nigla. He was a Rav, and he was a Pesach Halachos, the Rupshitzer, and but he decided that he felt something inside of him that he wants to come close to Chassidus, and Baruch Hashem, his parents were okay with that. So when he was 15 years old, he came to the Rebbe Melech, to Rebbe Melech, and Rebbe Melech refused to take him as a Talmid. He says, "Get out of here! I don't want miyuchasim. I don't want anybody with a yichus." What's yichus mean? Yichus is like to have a good lineage. I mean, his name was Horovitz. So Horovitz was the name of a lot of that he had a lot of tzaddikim, a lot of rabbanim in his family. Back to the Shalah, to Rabbi Shaya Levi Horovitz, who was Migdali Adar, and he was also a big Makubal. And so when he says his name is Horovitz, he says, I don't want any room. There's no room for miyuchasim here. So he started he started crying. So it's not my fault. He said, no, I don't want you. Go away. And so the story goes that only when he fainted, when the Rupshitzer fainted from just this intense desire to be a Talmid of Rebbe Melech, so then he said, okay, if you wanted that much, then I'll take you. And so he was by Rebbe Melech for a couple of years until Rebbe Melech passed away, and then he was a Talmid of the Chaim Lublin, okay, and he was considered one of the biggest Talmid of the Chaim Lublin. And afterwards, so he had his own Chassidus. So what he was known for. Actually, first I'll tell you another story about the way he related to his yichus. That he was once traveling with Reb Feivel Mezberish, and they were davening, and they daven what's interesting about Reb Naftali Rupshitzer is that everything was b'tznius. Everything was very very hidden. He was not like the Chaim Sanzer, for example. He was not like we know, like Karlin. They're into screaming, and he was very much the opposite. He wanted everything to be very personal, very not a showy. That nobody should think that you're anything holy. Okay, we'll get back to that more. So, but it was very intense. So he was Rafaivish understood that he davened very well. He davened very very long also, and so after he davened, So Rafaivish brought him a Chaim. And so before he took the Chaim, so he says, I want to tell you that my great grandfather was the Shalah, and his son was this Rav, and his son was this Rav, and this, just listing off all of his yichus. And so Rafaivish says to him, the Rebbe, with a davening like that, you don't need yichus. So he says, no, you mamish don't understand what I'm trying to tell you. That you, so when you finish davening, you say, wow, Baruch Hashem, what a good davening. I deserve a l'chaim. But me, when I finish davening, so I think to myself, wow, this, my davening was so nothing compared to my Alter Zeta, my Zeta, my father. They're looking at me and they're saying, well, what do we do to deserve such a pathetic grandson? And I feel so out of I feel like the last thing I'm in the mood for right now is to make a l'chaim. So I'm sure the end of the story is that he made a l'chaim to that, but we don't really, that's not really part of the story. So we do know that he was he loved making jokes. He loved making jokes. He especially loved making jokes about himself. Okay, but he loved making jokes in general. He had a custom that he was a badchen by chasnas. The by chasnas they used to be a custom, but by Hasidim they still have it. At the end of the chasnas, so there would be somebody that his job to make grammon, to make poems, making jokes about the different parts of the family, and so that was his job. He would come to chasnas, and he was what?
Like a roast.
Yeah, but in a roast in rhymes. Or is every roast in rhymes? Yeah. Okay. So, but in a playful way, you wouldn't say anything that's really going to humiliate anybody. Everything is very playful, and so the thing is that it's impossible to talk about one aspect of him without bringing in all the other aspects. The other thing is that he was a super genius. super genius, that on his matzeva, so it says one shvach about him is that it was Yachid b'darai b'chachma elokis. Right? I hope you know this. Okay, Yachid, it says on his matzeva, Yachid b'darai b'chachma elokis. He was he was the one of his generation. He outdid anybody in his generation, the Chachma Elukis, in godly wisdom. Okay, so he was very wise, he was a super genius. And so one of the things about his genius is that, something that, I'll tell you a story that it's really very hard for us to relate to such a story because it seems like superhuman, but by him, because he was such a genius, it's actually real. And that is that at the end of his life, so he stopped talking. He stopped conversing with people. He just davened. He didn't want to communicate with anybody. And so at some point, his son, who was a big tzaddik, there was the Rav Jikov, that he said, Abba, Tata, I can tell that you're not sick. Why aren't you talking? What's up with this? Stop with this garbage. and so the Rupshitzer told him that, I'll tell you that since I became an adult, I never said anything. I never said any words at all without having a hidden mystical meaning to what I'm saying. That I organized my thoughts that I shouldn't say anything unless I was able to think of a mystical meaning that what I'm saying should be true in a hidden higher realm. That it sounds like I'm talking about, could you please pass me the sour sticks, but really I'm referring to something going on in heaven. Okay? And so now I'm so old and weak that I can't make these calculations anymore. So I decided that better not to talk at all. Better not to talk at all than to talk without having these yichudim al yonim. So he stopped. So he stopped conversing. So it's a story that we can't I think most people that hear the story is oh, come on, that's ridiculous. You're trying to tell me that every single conversation he was such a super genius that much more than we can understand. He was not like somebody like us, just a little bit smarter. He was a different world of intelligence, of just a different world of IQ, that he can just be able to constantly be able to be thinking these things. So it's pretty awesome. So anyway, so when he was making these batchanim, that's part of what he was doing. Part of his sense of humor was that at the same time that he was appearing to just be making jokes, really he was making jokes on a higher celestial level. So when he became appointed to be Rav Rupshitzer, so in his in his acceptance speech, in the first drasha that he gave, so he said as follows. He said that there's a pasuk that says Zeh Sefer Toldos Adam. Zeh Sefer Toldos Adam. So Chazal say, what does it mean Sefer Toldos Adam? So it says that Hashem showed Adam Harishon Dar v'Darshav. He showed Adam Harishon every generation and their leaders. Okay. So the Rupshitzer asked that I don't understand why does Hashem have to waste Adam Harishon's time with showing him the generation? Just show him the leaders. The point is the leaders of the generation. Why does he have to show him the generation? So he said, you know why? Because he was going to come to this generation. Then he's going to show him me, and Adam Harishon, if he would see that I'm the leader of the Jewish people, so he would faint. He said, Hashem, what? What were you thinking? And so that's why first Hashem showed him you guys. That's why first he showed him the generation. And so that when he sees that I'm your leader, so he'll say, okay, I understand now. So that was the Rupshitzer's. That's all you know? Yeah. No, okay, good. So now part of his sneers and part of his trying to hide everything was that he, like I said, that he didn't want anybody to know that he was always putting himself down. And obviously when he wanted to do something crazy holy, so he made sure that nobody would know about it. Okay, so every night he would actually do tikkun chatzos. He would actually do tikkun chatzos, and when he did tikkun chatzos, so he would do it with like he would be rolling on the ground and be screaming, but he would make sure that the door was locked. Maybe he didn't scream because he was scared that people would hear from outside, but he would make sure the door was locked, that nobody should see him, nobody should see that he's a big ovid. So one night he forgot to lock the door, okay, and somebody happened to be passing by, and he's watching, and he walks in like get a good view of the Rupshitzer, and so at some point, so the Rupshitzer realizes that he forgot to lock the door, and somebody came in and has been watching him, and so he said, so he thinks, what can I do to fix the situation? Like he thinks I'm a tzaddik now. So you know what he says? He says, you know, if you guys, if the people here would understand what a big tzaddik I am, they would really give me more respect. It's a shame that you guys don't know how holy I really am. So he made himself to be like a Balgaiva. He made himself to be like a person who's boasting, so that this guy should think, what? Like, we always thought that he's an anav, and really he thinks that he deserves so much respect, so that he wanted him to go back and tell everybody that the Rav is such a boastful, arrogant Balgaiva, and really he was just doing this in order to cover up. I'm just amazed by that, amazed by the koach of a person. Like it was so important that they shouldn't think that he's holy, that he pretend that he's really a jerk. I'm completely blown away by that. Now, a similar story is that his Rebbe once told us Chassidim. He has the Chaim of Lublin. He was called the seer of Lublin because he had amazing Ruach HaKodesh. He was able to see what was going on all over the world, and so certainly, so with his Talmud, with Rupshitzer, so he was aware of what was going on. So one day, by Simchas Torah, so he told us Chassidim that you guys, I want you to know that the Hakafas in Rupshitz this year were very, very special. And I see that the Shalach HaKadosh, his great grandfather, that the Shalach HaKadosh came to dance the soul, the neshama of the Shalach came down to dance with Rupshitz, with the Kil of Rupshitz, with Reb Naftali. The story got to Rupshitz, and so Reb Naftali wanted to know what's up with this. So he went to visit this Rebbe, and he said, Rebbe, I heard that you were talking about my hakafas. You were impressed with my hakafas. What's going on? So he says, yeah. Is it true? Like did the shalah come down? So Naftali says, yeah, the shalah was with us, but he was actually very upset with me. So now the chazan was confused, and he says, yeah, he was mamish. He was like, I saw. He was like, he came to my kafas and he turned his back to me, and he wouldn't turn around. He was there on the shelf with all the other svarim, with his back to me. He won't turn around. So obviously the point was that he was like making a joke, as like that he was like, the Chaim was saying that the soul of the Shalah was in the Beis Medrash, and I was like, oh, he must have meant that just like the Sefer was in the Beis Medrash, and together with this, he was making a joke about the fact that as if his great grandfather would be upset with him. So he was an awesome guy, the Kitzer, and I think he has. I'm really excited to now. I'm really inspired to learn his Sefer. His Sefer is called Zera Kodesh, and I'm really excited to learn his Sefer on the Parshiyos. And I forgot that he was a Baal Menagin, that he composed music, and apparently that we have nigunim that were brought down from the Rupshitzer. Is huge soul. Okay, now moving on. Yud Beis, and this was today. This was Wednesday. So is the yahrzeit of? We promised some female heroes here, heroines. Somebody knows that I spelled heroine wrong. So this is the yahrzeit of the wife of the Maharal of Prague, Perele of Prague. So we're talking about 410 years ago in the year Shin Ayin. And so So what do we know about the wife of Maharal of Prague, Perele from Prague? So she was actually a very intellectual, very well-learned woman. She knew many languages. She learned Tanakh with Rashi. She learned all the midrashim. So the story goes that when she found out that she's going to have a shidduch with a big Talmid Chacham, so she was embarrassed. She was scared that she was going to get embarrassed by how much he knew. So she hired some Rav in Prague to teach her Gemara as well. So she felt, because she didn't want to be embarrassed that he knew so much, and she doesn't know Gemara. She only knows Tanakh and Midrashim and Halacha, and she didn't want to. like I guess until then she was like assuming that she's not going to get a person that knows Gemara, so like she'll be able to outdo him. So when she found out that she's marrying a big Talmid Chacham, so then she wanted to learn Gemara as well. And the Maharal he flowed with it, and he was very zarem with the fact that his wife was so learned, and she was actually very involved in publishing his books. That she was the editor of all of the books of Maharal of Prague. A lot of the things she even wrote in her own words. She was not only the editor, but she was like also the one who organized it. Even his halachic writings. So it says that a lot of his halachic rulings. So he didn't write them down properly. He would just write them down in just like receipts and like small pieces of paper, and he would just like have these like pile of just like little notes in, like I do this sometimes, like I write on the receipt from like different things, like to write my notes for shir on the back of her receipt. So he would do that too. And so she was the one that took all of these rulings and she put it into a book, and it writes in like in one of his biographies. So he thanks her for doing this, and he says that she is how impressive she was, and how that she asked him the best questions, and and how bright she is. So in fact, she was also pretty she was a powerful woman as well, and she was the one who ultimately convinced him to move back to Prague. She was from Prague, and she didn't appreciate the fact that when he was a Rav in Nikolsburg, then that she was away from her family, away from her friends. So she was the one who convinced him to move back to Prague, and it's because of her that he's called the Maharal of Prague, because if it would have been up to him, he would have been a Rav somewhere else. They had 6 daughters and 1 son. So these like strong female DNA was made a very big impression on that family. So she's so let nobody say that the Jewish history only has passive, compliant women. She was very strong, empowered, learned, and even Gemara woman. So okay, now next we move on to tomorrow night, Pesach Sheni. So first I want to talk about whose yahrzeits it actually is, and then I'm going to talk about whose yahrzeits it's not actually. Okay, it's not actually the yahrzeit of Rebbe Meir Baal Hanes. Okay, so we'll talk about where that came from, and we're going to talk about his life as well, because there's no other time to talk about it. But actually, historically speaking, so tomorrow night is the yahrzeit of Reb Chaim Meizel. He was the Rav of Lodz. Okay, Lodz was the second to biggest city in Poland, the biggest being Warsaw. And at the time of the Holocaust, it had 608,000 people, Jews in Lodz. At the time that he was a Rav, he passed away in 1912. So it was like, and he was a Rav for like 35 years there. So like when he was a Rav, there was about like 100,000 Jews there, and so he was like the second to biggest Rav in Poland. Okay, that's pretty big, right? So he was an amazing personality, this Rebbe Chaim Meizel, and he was known for his tzedakah, that whenever he would get his salary, he would immediately give it away. He would take whatever he needs, but there was no such concept of saving money. He would give away all of his money. He even borrowed money to take care of aniyim. He would borrow money to be able to give tzedakah, without knowing exactly where he was going to be able to pay it back. And his entire life he was in debt, because he was always borrowing money in order to help to help in Animat Tzedakah, so he was always in debt. Also, he writes that it was always important to him to be able to be lenient to aniyim. That he felt bad for them that when they came with a shaila, that if I would say that their chicken is treif, then they're going to lose money and they can't afford to buy another one. So that would pain him. He would always be looking for leniency. He would always be looking for a way to find some way that it should be okay. When he wasn't, so he would pay it out of his pocket. When he knew that the person couldn't afford a new one, he would give him money for a new chicken, give him money for a new pot, if it was pot that he was telling him that it was treif. So he was always helping out the aniyim. When he became Rav of Lodz, so there's a funny story that in those days it was common to make a big like parade, a big like party for like to celebrate when the person comes to a city to be a Rav, and they would make him a big party. But he was not interested in that, so he foiled their plans by only telling them. He snuck in. Basically, he told them that I'll be coming in like a month, and then he snuck in, and then he said, "Oh, by the way, I changed my mind. I just moved in yesterday." So they weren't able to make him an arrival party, he established an orphanage over there in Lodz. He also had amazing hachnasas orchim. He would have people sleeping over, and he himself would make their beds. He himself would serve them supper when people would come to slave over. Like these homeless people would stay in his house. On Shabbos and Yantiv, he was the Rav of the biggest shul, and on Shabbos and Yantiv he wouldn't go home until he made sure that every poor person had a Shabbos Yantiv meal. I mean, he was the first one. He started like this. You've heard of this custom, some people there's some shuls that at the after shul you can hope to get hosted. So